is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the MorganMan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Cole Morgan. Here on the MorganMan Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, COD champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scuff goes through, and Scuff snaps, wins the one-on-one in optic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacy Cole Morgan, and you are listening to the MorganMan Sports Podcast here on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Goodbody HQ, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Atlanta FaZe taking on the Miami Heretics with my preview and predictions for this weekend of the Minor One tournament that is happening for the Call of Duty League. And also, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the Atlanta Falcons with already the home and away opponents and where the Atlanta Falcons will pick in this year's 2025 NFL Draft. So without any further delay, let's get straight into today's action. All right, guys, so we are going to start things off with the Atlanta FaZe right here. And guys, the Atlanta FaZe has not been looking pretty to start off the Call of Duty League 2025 season, but we were on a winter break coming off a victory over the Vegas Falcons. And so that puts us at least in 8th place right now in point differential. So I'm not really liking it. 10th place in point differential. We are the last team to score 10 points. We are over the Los Angeles Guerrillas and the Vegas Falcons as they sit at 0 points. And the Miami Heretics are sitting at 10 points as well. But why they are 7th place is because they have a 9-win and 9-loss map count ratio, as the Atlanta FaZe, has 6 wins in maps and 10 losses in maps. So that's why the Miami Heretics are in 7th place, and that would be the playoff qualification cutoff, sitting at number 8 at least, but they would be that 2 spots ahead. So let's get a little bit into this matchup right here with some stats and everything going into it. So the Miami Heretics right now, ladies and gentlemen, are not favored in this matchup. It's actually the Atlanta FaZe sitting at a minus 286 on housebets.com. And I have to tell you, Atlanta FaZe needs to win this matchup this weekend right here, ladies and gentlemen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Atlanta FaZe needs to win and win big. This needs to be a 3-0 sweep in favor of Atlanta FaZe. Like, they cannot go and lose a single series during this Minor One tournament. They just cannot. And if you're looking at overall stats right here, I mean, Atlanta FaZe is 5th overall in hardpoint KD at a 1.04. Miami Heretics for the win percentage and hardpoint is 5th in the CDL at a 57.1%. Hardpoint score for like just overall scoring percentage, FaZe is nowhere in this category except for the Miami Heretics, which is an average of 232.43 points in hardpoint. For search and destroy, no team's really in the search and destroy category right now because both teams are just not performing at that high caliber standard, especially the Atlanta FaZe squad. For control, I mean, the Miami Heretics are 100% overall control map win percentage. So definitely they're undefeated right there. Also in KD, sitting at a 1.17. Control round wins is a 3.0 in favor of Miami. And control round plus or minus is 2.25 in favor of Miami. So the Atlanta FaZe is going to be struggling against this Miami Heretics team in control. The only time that Atlanta FaZe might have an opportunity is with that hard point KD, but they got to get on the hard point. there's no way of getting around it, ladies and gentlemen. FaZe is scared of getting on that hard point. It's like they cannot rely on backup or themselves to get the job done. They have to get the backup there in order to secure the point. And not only that, they leave with like 15 seconds left on the clock. And you just cannot do that, especially when you're down big, like Atlanta FaZe has been all season long. I mean, still, granted, yes, the FaZe clan is 1-3 right now, so only 4 games has been played. But those 4 games, the one win against the Vegas Falcons, man, I really thought the Vegas Falcons were going to beat us. And that was all coming down to the hard point, not getting on to the point or the hill, wherever you want to call it, and staying on there. You know, they'll capture it for like 20 seconds, boom, move off of it, and then the opponent gets on there, gets up to scrap time, and then dominates them in the turnover point. So Atlanta FaZe really needs to step things up when it comes to just decimating this Miami Heretics team. And this is a good team to do it against, because the Miami Heretics statistically have been known to struggle early in the season. And this is where you really need to start building up momentum for if you are the Atlanta FaZe squad. So as always, the last 5 matches was a win against the Vegas Falcons, 3 losses. 1 was against Toronto, Los Angeles Thieves, and Carolina Royal Ravens. And then the last match was actually the FaZe Clan Open Invitational, where I believe they won against the Los Angeles Thieves, if I'm not mistaken, in a 4-2. So I'm not really worried about that one, but I am worried about what the CDL stats do provide for the Atlanta Falcons. If you want to go over player stats right here for overall, this is just overall in hardpoint, S&D, and control. Your leading KD person is Simp at a 1.05. Slayer rating is an 87.04. I'm getting my stats from breakingpoint.gg. Respawn is a 1.04. NTK percentage is a 0.69, and BP rating is a 0.97. Second on that list is Abizi with a 1.0 KD, 87.68% Slayer rating. Respawn KD is a 1.01 rating. If you want to cover the Miami Heretics right here, ladies and gentlemen, their stats also is just somewhere right in there, but it's just not enough to really be justifiable, just like the Atlanta FaZe. I mean, yes, it's still early on in the season, but you still got to cover it. So for overall team stats for each player, the Miami Heretics leading KD killer is Rio, sitting at a 1.1 KD. Slayer rating is a 91.92. Respawn KD is a 1.12. And for second place is Rencor, sitting at a 1.07 KD. Slayer rating of a 90.23%. And Respawn KD of 1.11. So those two are definitely going to be tied with Simp and Abizi, the tiny terrors of Atlanta FaZe. I really am disappointed in Lucky, because Lucky has been one of those players that has been known to prove himself, but now so far in the season, he's not really performing at that top standard like he usually is. Sitting at a 0.92 KD, so obviously negative right there. Slayer rating is a 75.81, and Respawn KD is a 0.95. And for Atlanta FaZe, you know, really Celium, I mean, Draza, you could say, because he's got a 0.92, but Celium, in my personal preference, really needs to step things up, because he was a Slayer in Cold War, so there should be no difference right here in Black Ops 6. But Celium is a 0.95 and a KD with a Slayer rating of 79.52 and a 0.95 in Respawn KD. So those would be the players from each team I would be looking out forward to this weekend, this Friday, January 10th, for this minor one tournament matchup right here, ladies and gentlemen. But if I will have to say, Atlanta FaZe will win this one in a 3-1 fashion. I don't believe it will go to a complete sweep in favor of Atlanta, but I do think it will be a 3-1 for Atlanta to move on forward in this minor one tournament. So now we're moving on over, ladies and gentlemen, to the Atlanta Falcons side of things right here. And we already got a lot of news going into already a season heartbreaking loss. Yes, the Falcons had an opportunity to go 9-8, have a winning season for the first time since 2017, make the playoffs, but obviously that didn't happen because the Bucs did win their game against the Saints. So thanks for nothing, Saints. But hey, it's all right. I think this season has been better overall for the Atlanta Falcons than in previous seasons which was under Arthur Smith and those last couple seasons with Dan Quinn. So I'm going out on the grain here and saying that Raheem Morris is the right guy. But Raheem Morris needs to study that film just like the players and know, all right, this is where I should have called a timeout. This is where I should have substituted Grady Jarrett for this player, whatever the case is. I think Raheem Morris is still responsible, especially that Washington game, not calling that timeout. But still, I think Raheem Morris is the right man for this job. He's got this offseason now to really learn this playbook with Zach Robinson. Now, Jimmy Lakes, on the other hand, I think he needs to go because how are you going to let this Carolina Panthers team beat us in our home and score that many points? And they were near like the bottom of the barrel team in scoring. I wouldn't accept that if I was Arthur Blank. I would find me a new D coordinator this offseason. Jimmy Lakes is just not it. We appreciate your efforts, Jimmy, but hey, we got to go. Arthur Blank wants to win a championship and now. So obviously, again, that's not going to happen this season as the season is coming to close with an 8-9 record. So surprisingly, it's still a better record, like I will say, than previous seasons, like 4-12, 6-10, 7-9, etc., etc. So later on, I will be going into key takeaways that I think the Falcons can improve on way later in the season, because now we got obviously 7 months to really prepare for the next NFL season. The Atlanta Falcons and other teams who has been eliminated from the playoffs has got a lot more time to prepare. So we will get into that a little bit later, but let's talk about the opponents that the Atlanta Falcons will face. Now, granted, none of these are in order, but the home opponents is the Panthers, New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, always given, the Los Angeles Rams, Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, the Washington Commanders. For the road, it's your division rivals, as always, the Cardinals, Patriots, Jets, 49ers, the Colts, and the loser of the Minnesota-Detroit game. But I am recording this on Sunday before SNF, so I will say it's more than likely going to be the Minnesota Vikings, in my personal opinion. But of course, that will change if Detroit somehow loses, but they're fighting for that number 1 spot in the NFC playoffs. So I just don't think Detroit is going to give up that good. Neither is Minnesota, but I think we will be facing Minnesota on the road in 2025. Now, as far as the NFL draft goes, that will be in April. So we got 3-4 months away from that right now. And the Falcons will be picking between anywhere of 14th, 15th, or 16th in this year's NFL draft. It will all come down to the Dolphins and Cardinals game that are still in play. But according to Mike Conti, that will be anywhere between 14th and the 16th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, where the Falcons will select from. So I like it. I really do. right there is kind of the middle of the pack. You know, you've got a winning team, but also there still needs to be a little tweaks here and there, especially in that coaching staff. But as far as player personnel goes, you can still change a lot of scenarios moving forward. So that will be the info right now for the Atlanta Falcons. But of course, if any major players get cut from this team or added to the team, you know, whatsoever, of course, you will be hearing it on Emergency Podcast, because we are now going to be in that transition as for emergency podcast season for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. But as far as right now, during the Friday schedule, as long as the Call of Duty League season is continuously playing, there will be a podcast. So I'm super excited about it, guys, and I sure hope you are as well. But guys, that is all the time I have for today's episode. I sure hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. And I, Cole Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.